Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today, and I apologize for that slight technical delay. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director here at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on uranium today. We're going to hear from Purepoint Uranium Management, Chris Frostad, the President and the CEO. During today's webinar, he'll provide us an overview and outlook, and then we'll take some questions. You can type your questions at any time into the chat box, and we'll take as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Purepoint webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Purepoint's corporate presentation. That can be found on the company's website, purepoint.ca. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors, and participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Purepoint Uranium. Now, before Chris steps up, I would like to say a couple words. We had very positive news for the uranium sector on Monday. Sprott Physical Uranium Trust increased its base shelf prospectus to $3.5 billion US. So what that means is after raising $1.3 billion already this year, it now has regulatory permission to nearly triple that amount. So expect the company to continue to add to its 40 million pounds of worth of physical uranium, currently worth $1.5 billion US. Now, we do view potential for Sprott Physical to raise further funds as very good news. We still await an increase in long-term contracting to really support uranium prices on a sustainable basis. But we would still love uranium demand to be driven by end-user buying. Nuclear utilities, they use about 177 million pounds of uranium annually, but they have not made major purchases or signed contracts of magnitude in recent times. Perhaps the recent Chinese purchase of uranium from Kazatomprom may be a sign of things to come, but of course we don't know the volumes there. So we will just have to hope. So, however, ongoing uranium purchases by Sprott should be expected should further funds be raised. And should this limit available supply, this should limit available supply and increase uranium spot prices as a result. So one cannot ignore the impact that physical buying has had on prices this year. You look to Sprott, its initial 300 million equity raise helped drive prices from $30 to $40 a pound in just 1 month, starting in mid-August. And then that was followed by another $1 billion it raised via ATM. Spot prices increased to the current 46, 47 range. So we now anticipate another, potentially up to $2.2 billion. Should that happen, it would fund additional physical purchases, and that could see could see prices propel north of $50 a pound, perhaps close to incentive prices needed by some of the uranium developers out there. So definitely we do anticipate uranium equities to react positively to this news. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chris to update the audience on the company. So Chris.
Thanks, Dave. And there's my presentation. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today, and thank you, Dave and Red Cloud, for the folks for setting this this presentation up. We will get right into it here. Purepoint Uranium is an exploration company, uranium exploration company in northern Saskatchewan. We've been operating up there for some time now, so we're well established in the area. In recent years, our focus has been on our Hook Lake project, which is a joint venture with Cameco and Orano. It's in the southwestern edge of the basin, adjacent to NextGen and Fission's discoveries down there, and we're just to the north, and we've been moving that project along and advancing it quite well for a while now. And we've really been focused on that project primarily because of the state of the market. What a lot of people may not know about Purepoint is that we actually have another 11 projects that are well advanced, and these are great projects that we've picked up during the previous cycle and during the down cycle. And these are the projects that we also want to really start focusing on now that the markets are more appreciative of investing in uranium and in for us spending that money to find uranium in the ground. So there's a lot of focus this year as things are heating up to getting back out into those other projects and advancing discoveries that we made 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's now time to really get those things moving. Speaking of those, this is our land package in the Athabasca Basin in northern Saskatchewan. Everything there you see there in orange. And I think the thing really to note here is the fact that these are all very solid projects that we have advanced to this point. We've actually staked and released a lot of property over the years, but these are the ones that we've kept and maintained because these are the ones with the most promise. And most of these are projects that we've actually done some drilling on. We've had uranium discoveries in most of them to date. The ones that we have drilled, you see some of the numbers there on the left-hand side from Hook Lake, where we've hit grades over 50%. Red Willow, we're going to be out there this year. We've hit mineralization in Osprey and Geneva and Radon Lake. Smart Lake and Umfraville, we hit mineralization on those projects in our very first program. So these are great projects that we're quite excited to get back out to. Just to follow up on Dave's opening comments, this is a bit of a look at what's been going on the last year and how we see things moving forward. The graph on the left, what you're looking at there, these are all price changes in the last year. What is in red is the spot price. You see it lying there at the bottom with the blue line, which is the long-term price. And we did see a fair amount of action in 2020. This year, the first half of the year, things seem to be fairly modest as it was plateauing out, and then kicked into it near the end of the year. The yellow line is the Uranium Participation Group, which was transformed into the Sprott Physical Uranium Fund in July. This is the company that David was speaking of before we started. And what you do see is by around September, their share price and the spot price started to snap to sort of in tandem as we moved forward, which is what we would have expected. The black line is the change in share prices that we've seen over the last year in the equities. And these are the equities you see on the right, the lower right, kind of a conglomerate of those. And the graph on the right actually breaks apart your producers from your developers, from your explorers, and to see how they've been reacting. So it's been a very bullish year for equities in general, relative to what we've seen in the spot price. Obviously, we're seeing equities outpace the spot, outpace the growth in the uranium prices. One thing we do note is in September was really when we saw the price change kick in both the long term and the spot price as a result of what was happening with the Sprott Trust. But after that month of September, it's quieted down a bit. The equities continued to move though through October and kind of leveled out in November. So November has been more of a flat month in line with what we've been seeing in uranium prices. Everybody's taking a bit of a breather right now, but as David pointed out, we've still got a long way to go before we even hit incentive prices. So we're expecting a great year moving forward. Like numerous peers, all of our peers, we've all been enjoying the markets over the last year. Our folks at Red Cloud helped us raise $5 to $7 million earlier this year, and we've been putting that money to work. We still have about $3.5 to $4 million in the bank coming into the new year, so we're pretty much prepared to get back out in the field and keep things moving along. I'm going to start by talking first about Hook Lake, which is the project that we've been known for the last few years. This is our project with Cameco and Orano. You see this there in the orange lines there. That is our claim block. To the south, we're running along that Patterson trend. You see fission uranium in the south with their little over 100 million pounds. Next gen, as we move north, a little over 250 million pounds. Our Spitfire deposit at the claim line, we put a fair amount of work into that. In the early days, we've moved north to see if we can find something bigger, and we've been finding mineralization as we drill further to the north. This coming year, we're going to be focusing on a bit of a different tact, though. And I'm going to start by showing you this picture here. This is last year, there was a study put out by the Geological Survey of Canada, and it was a study that they'd spent a fair amount of time on out in the area, in the region. They were working at out of our camp for some of that and some of our neighbors. This particular slide is a gravity survey that they had released, and it showed us a few things. First of all, if you're looking at this, the pink is a gravity high, the blue is a gravity low. What we saw as we were looking at this was it became clear that the deposits, the Triple R, the Arrow, the Spitfire, were all occurring in those transition zones between the gravity highs and the gravity lows. And the rock types there were it was a mix of granitic gneiss and diorite gneiss. But what we found is if we got out of those areas, the mineralization stopped. And so even to the north, where we were finding mineralization along the way, it was always within that specific rock type. So that was an important learning. One of the other aspects, though, that was important, that conclusions they drew was how the uranium was formed in the area. The blue area to the left, you see there, is the Clearwater domain, and what they believe is that was the heat source that created the mobilization of the uranium and the fluids that would have moved that heat. As that heat source moved out, it would have created the mobilization of the hydrothermal fluids, looking for those structures to kind of make their deposits into. So those fluids were running, the heat was running along the surface or through the sandstone. It could have been coming up through the basement rock, but they feel that was the impetus of that deposition. What's drawn our attention really is this area to the left of the Patterson Trend, and that is the Carter Corridor, and it runs parallel to the Patterson corridor. The third corridor to the far right is the Dirksen corridor, which was actually where some of the earlier hits drew us to this area. The thing that we're looking at with regards to Carter is two things. First of all, it sits in the right rock type. It is in that transition area where we found our previous mineralization. The other thing is that it's much closer to the heat source than Patterson Lake. So as this heat source was mobilizing fluids to the east, this is turning into a much better target than we'd originally thought. We actually did a drill program out in 2008 out there, one drill program. Purepoint drilled 3 holes. That predated any of the findings and showings on the Patterson. At that time, we were looking for unconformity deposits. After those 3 holes, things kind of lit up over at Fission's Triple R, and we moved all of our efforts over to that trend. Within that hole, though, we did find radioactivity about 50 meters underneath the unconformity, and we found a considerable amount of alteration. But as I mentioned, we weren't looking for basement-hosted deposits back then, like Arrow and Triple R. So we're moving our attention back out to this Carter Corridor, where really there's been no drilling other than that program, and we're in discussion with our partners now as to what those next steps should be to start defining those drill targets. A lot of the drilling we're doing now and we'll be doing in the winter, though, is on our other projects. We have 11 other projects across the basin, as we've mentioned before. Our focus will be, I'm going to go back. Will be at Turnor Lake, Henday, and Red Willow up here to the north. It's at the north end. These projects are to the north end of the mine trend that runs up the eastern side of the basin. Henday, we're drilling now, and Red Willow will be drilling through the winter, and then Turnor Lake into the summer. Here's the actual schedule of what we expect to see in the coming year. Right now, we are drilling at Henday. I'll go into a little bit more detail on these projects, but we're drilling right now at Henday. We're hoping to get 5 holes in. We should be done sometime around mid-December. and should have results fairly quickly thereafter. We've never drilled at Henday, so this is a first initial drill program out there. Red Willow will be moving drills out there in January, and we've got a number of targets we'll be going after at that point and following up on. We hope to get about 6,000 meters of drilling in through those months. Turnor Lake, late summer, early fall, we'll be out there drilling that area. As I mentioned at Hook Lake, we'll probably be doing some initial geophysics to get some drill targets defined through the winter. And then our other projects, which are more early stage, we will be doing a variety of geophysical surveys on those projects in the first half of this year as well to get them ready for drilling. So to focus back on where we're doing the drilling, this is our Henday Lake project. It sits just west of Denison's Husky Zone and J Zone, and Rio Tinto's Rough Rider Zone. It sits on an east-west alteration corridor that ties into those deposits. We've got a fair amount of kilometers, about 7.5 kilometers of conductor targets in the area with a fault zone running through the center, and that's where we are today. We hope to get in 5 holes. It's a little deeper than we anticipated. We're going down 450 to 500 meters. We were assuming it would only be about 350 to 400, and that was based on a historic hole that Cameco drilled out here many years ago. But this fault structure that comes through the center, there seems to be quite a shift in the basement depth. So we're drilling a little deeper than we thought we were going to have to. Nonetheless, these are the three collared zones where we're drilling from. And again, we're hoping to get 5 holes in there before the end of the year. Red Willow. Red Willow is probably our largest project. It's right at the end of the mine trend, as I mentioned. The edge of the basin runs through it. Certainly, when we first started working out there, the world didn't think that deposits could live outside of the basin, but that's been proven wrong a few times now. So it's a great project. It has a lot going on, a lot in the areas you can see, and it's fairly shallow. So the drilling tends to be somewhat simple. The zones you see there in the gray circles, we haven't done any drilling on those targets yet. They've all been defined and ready to go. We hope to get a drill out there this year, but we will be focusing on the Osprey, the Geneva, and the Radon Lake zone, which is where we have been hitting uranium to this point. This is the Osprey zone. We've hit I'm not going to say large, but it's a small deposit of uranium, and it's primarily open to the east, northeast. The circle just to the northeast of it there is a large uranium and soil anomaly, and we'll be testing it in that direction. Plus, we'll be testing to the north along that yellow conductor, which again is untested. So we're hoping really to open up and expand that into a much larger deposit at this point and follow up on a lot of the uranium we've been seeing in the area. Just south of that is our Geneva zone, and it's quite interesting. When we originally started drilling out there, again, we've always been looking for unconformity deposits. And now what we're seeing is that a lot of these deposits are much deeper into the basin. We have to look for them in a bit of a different fashion. You see a gray triangle there, which is it's kind of our open area right now, where we will be focusing our efforts looking for larger mineralization than we've been finding to date. In the northwest there, you see Rad 27, 0.22% U3O8 over a meter. We've drilled other holes, come up with similar results. That's one of the corners we're following up on. To the right, you see that anomalous radon in water. There's a lake there called Radon Lake. Radon, of course, is a product of degrading uranium, and we've yet to determine the source of that radon gas. And it's actually the highest levels of radon gas they found on any of the eastern surveys that have been done along the basin. Then to the south, we've got Rad 0809, where again we found 283 parts per million uranium over a meter or so. So this area has got a lot of mineralization, a lot of uranium going on. and we're going to be now moving further into that whole region, looking for deeper basement-hosted deposits. In the summer, we'll be getting out to Turnor Lake. Turnor Lake is a project, again, we've had for some time. In the center there, you see that S-shaped, it's a granitic dome called the Kelsey Dome. But the red graphitic targets that wrap around it are the primary targets that we go after. And as you can see, there's been a fair amount of uranium found in the area. Of primary interest on the left-hand side, you see the what we refer to as the Laroque corridor, which starts to the south. Orano had a showing down there. The alligator's showing at 3.8% over 10 meters or so. In the center, we've got Cameco's Laroque showing at close to 30% U3O8 over 7 meters. And then more recently, IsoEnergy's Hurricane Zone. It's 33.9% over 8.5 meters is one of their better holes up there. So, and that's been coming along nicely. So you can see that corridor actually continues on to the north, crosses our claim at the north end, where that one red conductor called the Sarin conductor is one of our primary targets this coming year. We have a number of areas here that we need to test. But that one is a particular interest because of a seismic line that was cut across the top of our project back in 1985 by SMDC, which was a predecessor of Cameco. And what it saw was that right at the conductor, there's a significant 150 meter difference there where it's a faulted area where that setting is somewhat common. In this area, we've seen it at Key Lake, we've seen it at McArthur River, so it's highly attractive for deposition. So we'll be testing that this summer as well, and following up on a lot of those discoveries in the area. So I'll leave it there. Those are the drill programs we've got planned right now and are ongoing. There will be other drill programs as we see the results of these. We will keep cycling them on as we move forward, and as well as I said, bringing on some of our earlier stage projects to get them ready for a drill as well. So David, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Great presentation. So we are going to kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar right now. Reminder to everybody online, you could type your questions into the chat box. We already have quite a few questions up here. So Chris, yesterday you released plans for the new year. Could you maybe break those plans down into drilling meterage and or a budget? I guess it looks like you've still got 2,500 meters for Henday left in the fourth quarter, and then 6,000 meters scheduled for Q1. But can you maybe quantify it a little bit?
Well, again, the drilling at Red Willow, that's where the 6,000 meters will be, is rather quick drilling. So we're hoping to get. I don't even want to quantify how many holes. We can actually do quite a bit of drilling out there with that sort of time frame. And same with the 5,000 we're going out at Turnor. We want to focus on the three areas that I pointed out. Depending on how our timing is and how things go, if we have an opportunity, we will drill some of those other targets where we have not drilled at all yet. Those are kind of inaugural holes, and it's a good time for us to get out there if we've got the time and at least get a hole or two into those projects or in those targets to see whether they're worth following up on as well. The Turnor Lake program will be a drill, or will be a helicopter program, just because of the terrain to get up there to the north. So we will have a helicopter drill, a fly drill, and a helicopter, and so we may take advantage of that and actually hit a couple of the other targets back at Red Willow that will require a drill. So there's going to be a lot of flitting around. I think I've shown you the highlights of where we want to be and where we want to get our focus. But we're going to be all over the place, I think, this coming 6 months for sure.
Right, right. Okay. I guess you need to crystal ball a little bit for this one, but what are your expectations for the weather this year? You know, last year was a short field season, definitely cut a lot of explorations in half. I guess maybe look at it this way: are you doing anything to counteract another potentially warm winter?
Well, it's interesting. Henday right now is typically a drive-in because we can drive in there from the logistics hut up there, which points north. But we had a fly drill, so we've been using a helicopter because it is a bit boggy. We tend to like to hit those targets in the summer when we can get around on snow, but we are using a helicopter. What happens around this time of the year is that the daylight gives us a problem because you can only get in and out during the light of day. So your night shift becomes 14 hours and your day shift becomes 6 hours. And people don't tend to like that. It is snowy up there right now. Like it's all frozen. So we actually had winter hit us quite early up there, which is a good thing, which means that we're now getting in and out by snow machine. And it's supposed to be a fairly cold winter. So as long as things stay cold, we're able to get around quite handily. Red Willow, is we drive. There's a road right up to it at these points. It goes through. It goes right up through the mill up there. As I mentioned, Henday's right off the road. Turnor Lake's the one that's a bit of an issue to get to, and we've typically had a camp up there and flown in and out. But again, I think just to kind of counteract the problems we may run into, we'll be using a helicopter so that we can make sure we'll be able to get in and out easily.
Right. Okay. I have a question here. Can you explain how you go about gaining social license for programs, specifically on the western side of the basin, where certain First Nations communities have become concerned about the volume of uranium activity in and around traditional lands? And I guess this specifically is the CDRN notice where Purepoint was named.
Right. So. Companies. Right. I mean, this is Chief Clark up there. We've worked with him for a decade or two now, and we've always had a very good relationship with the folks up there. I'm actually honest to God, I got off the phone with them half an hour before this call. So, and we're going to be meeting with them in Saskatoon in a week or so, next week, as a matter of fact, just to talk about what we're doing up there, what our programs are, where we're going to be, how our camps are kept. We typically, we do a lot of hiring in the north. Where we can, we hire staff out of the local communities. We tend to use local service providers as much as possible. Which again, for a company of our size and what we're doing up there, that's the primary objective in our relationship with them is to work with the communities and make sure that we're buying our fuel from them, buying our groceries from them, hiring staff from them when we can, and that sort of stuff. So our relationship with them is very good. It's open. We talk regularly, and as I mentioned, I'll be in Saskatoon next week to meet with the chief, and we'll be talking about the issues that he raises in his press release, which are issues that we talk about on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. I have a couple questions on corporate, and then we'll get into some projects here, I think. What is your cash balance, and how long will it last? And do you envision further dilution or consolidation of shares?
We have just over $3.5 million right now, which takes us quite a ways. Our overheads have typically been low. We had a vote for a consolidation at our last AGM, but it was primarily just so we'd have it in our pocket. We're probably one of the few folks left out there that haven't had a consolidation over the years, which is why we got a fairly large share count out there. But it's not our plan to actually do a consolidation because typically we don't see that go as well for anybody, particularly the shareholders. So, if in the event of a transaction, if there's an event or something where it would make sense to do that, we would utilize it. But we have no immediate plans for a share consolidation.
Okay. Are you considering any new M&A activity or new joint ventures?
We're, you know what, it's a small community. And actually, when we talk to the folks at Red Cloud, they almost get annoyed at that because we're out there talking to each other without your help sometimes. So it's, we are always talking about M&A. We are always talking about projects and joint ventures and things like that. So, we have a number of things that we're working on right now with a number of our peers and friends and neighbors out in the basin. We typically will be staying in the basin. That's where our expertise is. That's where where we are. But we're seeing that there's a lot of new players wanting to come into the basin, and that's fine. I mean, to the extent that it helps advance some of our projects, we're in discussions with them. Plus, there's other projects that we want to get involved in beyond our current portfolio, and we're in discussions with other folks about that. But that's a typical ongoing activity for us, and that's certainly been heightened in the last year. But there's always that sort of stuff going on, and it should. We've all got different approaches and resources available to us, and it's going to be a tough year for resources out there. Yeah. So we hope you'll be seeing some of that news out of us as well.
Okay, we'll watch for that. Thank you. You do have a large project pipeline. How do you go about prioritizing work at these, specifically while having enough work to adequately test the projects?
Have enough
work at each of the projects to adequately test the targets you need.
Sure. Well, we look at them all as one big pool. I mean, it's a balance between, every time we poke a hole in the ground, you reprioritize your life out there and, what takes precedence. So certainly, in terms of the most prospective area to be working, that's where we're going to want to be. But also we have to take into account the time of year. We have to take into account where we have permits and where we don't have permits, and where we have resources and where we don't have resources. As I mentioned, some projects you can't get to without a helicopter. So it's going to take a different layer of priority. So it's an ongoing process, and it's not a difficult one. But we do have a lot of projects, and that makes sure that we can always be busy, and we're always putting our efforts towards what we hope is the most prospective next step towards another discovery.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Hook Lake JV, what's the budget, and will it be more aggressive than last year? What's holding you back here? So is one company more or less desiring to push this project forward at this point?
And I think you'd find this with any company of our size working with with the majors. And as I've always said, these guys pace us. It's the nature of the beast. Cameco and Orano, who've been fabulous partners from a technical stance, from a financial stance. They have different objectives than us, and they operate in 5 and 10 year increments, and we're working month to month. So there's always a bit of a push and pull there. And as I've also said before, they do not like us out there with a drill or spending money before we've digested all the appropriate geophysics and planning and the like. So we're very seriously moving our efforts over to this Carter corridor now. Which is really lit up in light of how we understand the basin and how we understand that particular region, and we now have a model for how the mineralization occurs. We now have a model as to how it was, where it came from, and that really is taking us back to the Carter corridor. So right now we're continuing our discussions with them as to what those next steps are. There's some geophysics they're going to want to do first. We haven't set a budget yet for the new year. But it will probably initially take the form of some additional geophysics to nail down the drill targets for them.
Okay, great, thank you. On to Red Willow here. Shallow EM conductors appear common, but they also seem to be oriented in every which direction. Does your exploration focus on traditional structural trends that are typical of the Eastern Athabasca, or is this forcing you to come up with some new ideas?
Well, what you see, if I had my bigger map in front of me, is they don't tend to go all over the place. There is a south southwest to northeast trend on all of this. But if you look at the basement rock is made up of hard granites and some softer sediments. And what you'll typically see is the conductors that we chase, that graphite that's in the basement rock, is wrapped around nose folds and things like that. So it's where you see the complexity or the bending in these targets that tend to be more productive, and that's always been the case. I think what's changed in terms of approach is we're now looking at deeper deposits, which we didn't before. It was felt that that mineralization occurred at the unconformity, and for anybody who's watching who's not familiar with how we look for it out there, but your Athabasca Basin is a big bowl in the Canadian Shield full of sandstone, and typically these deposits are occurring right at the bottom of that bowl. Now what we're seeing, we've certainly seen it at NextGen's Arrow deposit, Fission's Triple R. We've seen it in Millennium. We've seen it more and more, and we're now recognizing it as we go back to some of the drilling we did 10 years ago. That, in fact, we're not even touching mineralization until we get maybe 50, 60 meters under that unconformity. So what it's doing is it's from everything that we've been touching mineralization right across this basin. And what we're recognizing now is it's not a matter of how these targets, what direction they're in. It's the depth. It's the depth of these targets and how they were formed at depth. So we are changing our approach in that regard. As I mentioned at Geneva, we've been poking holes trying to find things along those conductors and where that Radon Lake is. But in fact, now that we're looking at it through a new set of eyes, it's, oh my gosh, it looks like everything else we've been seeing deeper. So it's time to take another run at it in a different direction.
Yeah, great. You perfectly answered my next question, which I was going to talk about. You mentioned during Geneva, you were testing unconformities 10 years ago for unconformity mineralization. Now you're testing basement rocks. But That's not just Geneva. That's pretty much typical of
it's everything. It's Red Willow or it's up at Osprey, where we're moving that mineralization up to the east and chasing it. We're chasing it in a basement hosted manner like that we're looking at it as though that's what we've got, as opposed to something lying flat at the unconformity. So all of our discoveries of the last 5, 6, 7 years now look different to us, because we understand what we're looking for in much more granularity than we did before.
Right. Okay. Maybe switch to Turnor Lake here for a second. Can you discuss the potential along the Laroque trend there? Specifically along strike of ISO's high-grade hurricane discovery. Now, I saw some recent results from ISO and some sections. It looks like they don't have a major offset in the basement, like I actually had anticipated. I see your geophysics suggests it's there. I think we see those offsets at MacArthur. I think we see them at Phoenix. Maybe any comment on that, or you?
And this summer you'll see it at Turnor Lake. So that is we have other trends to the south. If you look at the map again on Turnor Lake is actually the long lake that sits at the southeast edge of the claim block. And that's another area that, as you go south from it off the claim, Orano had some really good holes down below it as well. So that's another area that we haven't tested that needs to be tested. But to the north, that's kind of the obvious one right now, where we've seen, because those holes that I'm talking about, the Little Rock, the Alligator, all of those are like 8 or 9 kilometers apart. Like, it is a long corridor. And this mineralization has been continuing in a very high grade fashion all the way up it. So we're quite anxious to get up there and test it with that setting in mind, with that faulted area along the conductor.
Okay. Look forward to that. So, general question here, and possibly a little bit hypothetical. Once you've seen enough positive drill results, what's the timeline and process of quantifying how large the deposit is on the property? And, when do you anticipate having a resource estimate? So, no project mentioned, but it's probably the same answer across your
well, it truly is. I mean, I will say that with our 100% owned projects, we have the ability to advance things a little quicker. than we do with our partnership at Hook Lake. And that's no slam on our partners by any means. It's just it's the manner in which they explore. We have, and their budgets are set for a year in advance, and then that's it. Whereas, if we start to drill into something of merit, we can continue that process, and we can increase our budgets, and we can move in there and do more active drilling. So, I think you'd almost have to look back at, the Arrow deposit or Triple R, from their first discovery hole through to a resource estimate. It was a matter of a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay, great. And then I guess last question we have here. So when do you foresee ground geophysical surveys in the near term and longer term? And what techniques are most helpful for guiding your programs to, looking for those right structures and perhaps uranium pregnant zones alteration? And, I guess full disclosure here, this person does run a ground geophysical survey.
Is it somebody I know? Oh, so... Well, we've been finding that the gravity map I showed you has been very helpful these days in other areas as well. It helped NextGen a lot when they found the Arrow deposit, and we've been using it in other places. And we used it up at Umfraville, and we managed to hit uranium right out of the gate up there. So we're finding gravity's been a very good tool for us, but. Beyond that, it's getting the conductors. It's typically your VTEM. As we're getting into deeper areas, such as like some of our deeper projects, ZTEM. Again, it's just a matter of depth and the product you're using to see what you want to see. So, again, we're using typical variations of EM, but we're finding gravity to be very helpful these days.
Okay, and gravity because the uranium is essentially dense, and the alteration or the sandstone may not be. And
well, we're finding there's very specific rock types that is hosting these deposits, and the gravity is giving us a better sense of the more favorable areas and rock types that we would want to go after.
Okay, and how about being off EM, off conductor? I think Rough Rider was off conductor. Maybe the 92 Energy stuff looks like it might be the hit they have is off conductor, but they're certainly talking about mag going north. That's off conductor.
Well, again, the conductors are a bit of a red herring in that, from two senses. If the only place you look is where there's a conductor, then you're only going to find uranium at conductors. But in fact, it's not so much the conductor or the graphite as it is the structure, right? We're looking for structures in the basement rock that are conducive to that sort of deposit. As we talk about, if this is your rock type and it starts to fold like this, well, all of a sudden you've got a pocket where uranium can settle in and precipitate. If you're in a fault area that's just cracked and shattered, it's not going to rest there. So graphite, being such a soft rock, tends to help in creating those pockets without fracturing everything around it. So that's why. But it's really more about the structure than it is the graphite itself. Having said that, there's typically graphite in the area when we're finding things.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Chris from Purepoint. I appreciate you talking to me today.
Good. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Reminder, the Red Cloud Securities will be back Monday afternoon when yours truly sits down with uranium and PGE-focused Valor Metals. That's November 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern, so have a great day. Thank you very much.